Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am your host Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Gary. Pirates are rolling. They're rolling.
Yeah, they are looking fabulous right now, and so we decide we got to have somebody world famous on the show so that we can talk about stuff. And
Gary,
it's been
I'm
a long
already here,
time.
but
It's been a long time since I've talked to Jordan, and
Yeah.
we used to kind of sort of pseudo work together a little bit on this network,
Yeah, we
So our
did.
paths crossed quite a
Mhm.
bit. And yeah, just one of the most talented people that I know. She's a musician. She does a Penguins podcast called Fly Penguins Fly. She's a member of the Yins Hers. She has been on podcasts on Fifth on this network. What else can you say? Jordan, say hello to everybody. Let's have some good baseball talk.
Yeah, that was a very kind introduction. Thank you, Gary. It's really good to be here to talk in a positive way about the Pirates because that is a rarity in this millennium. So I'm just happy to be here and hopefully hype people up about what's going on
what
with the
what
Bucs right now.
what is the world coming to when a Pens person has to come to the Pirates podcast to feel good about something? So
I
weird,
know
It's
weird,
next
bleak.
next
weird.
thing you know, we'll have Smitty on. I mean, like
Oh my
we're gonna
God,
have to
yeah.
rescue all these guys that are stuck talking about these other teams that are struggling right now. No, in all seriousness though, we have baseball back, right? I mean,
hmm
that's what it feels like. And Jordan, you're somebody that I specifically wanted to have on the show because I know you're a fan of good sports, basically.
Mm.
I think I'm not saying you're a bandwagon fan, but I'm saying there's certain sports you'll tune out a little bit when they're not going right, and baseball's one of them for you.
Yeah,
So,
and I would say it's just because of the amount of games in a season because I'll dip not not so much in recent years with the Penguins, but throughout middle school and high school, I would be in and out of the NHL season too because you can start off really poorly and end the season strong and go on to win the Stanley Cup, which is what the Penguins uh did back in 2016. But
sure.
yeah, there are just a lot of games, and I kind of keep an ear to the ground each season with the Pirates, but there is always typically that point of no return in July or August when it's
Right.
very apparent this team is not going to make the playoffs. So then I just kind of disengage, and that's when Steelers training camp is starting to pick back up again. So yeah, oftentimes because of the way the Pirates seasons play out, I use them as a distraction from the fact that there is no football or hockey going on. But I I've said this to many people before, and I'll say it over and over and over again until I die. The Steelers were my first love, and the Penguins are my true love. But if I had one option, if somebody came to me and said, you can choose one Pittsburgh team to win a national championship, and that's it for the rest of your life, I would pick the Pirates to win the World Series, hands down. I That's what I want more than anything in the sports world. So yeah, we have an interesting relationship, but this season has been pretty dang fun so far.
And Jim, that's the way to put it. Fun. It's been fun watching them
hmm
just excel. How have you felt watching this? Because we try to keep a pretty level head. Even right now, you and I are both still holding on to our predictions pretty firm and everything, right?
Yeah.
But you have to admit what you're seeing right now, it's pretty exciting and straight up good baseball, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, winning is fun, and the Pirates and the fans haven't had enough of that. And so, you get a taste of it and you want more. Certainly, we have that little guy on our shoulder saying, don't get too
Yeah.
far ahead of yourselves. It's all going to come crashing down. It may, but you know what? There's some really good signs. I tweeted the other day, hey, this season's already like 11% over. Like we're as early as it is. So look, I'm just enjoying it. and I hope that they can keep it up. And if they don't, there's still plenty to be encouraged about right now.
Sure. I mean, Jordan, you've seen the Penguins bring in veterans in the past, arguably far too many of them recently, but if they bring in a veteran, somebody like a Billy Guerin, a little bit long in the tooth. You don't expect as much out of him. Somehow, like, he just takes on that leadership role and just owns the room and leads by example, and somehow has like a resurgence of his youthful skills. Watching this team, you're seeing that sort of thing with Carlos Santana and Andrew McCutchen
Mm-hmm.
and Rich Hill to a certain degree. I know his performance was a little shaky at the beginning, but they have just embraced the role of being the leaders on this team. What's that like watching?
It's one of those things that you don't even realize had been missing until you see it playing out, because that, there, even last year, there, as bleak as that season was, there was talent on the team, but there were a lot of things that they weren't doing, like committing 100% to hustling on running bases and just doing those little disciplines that create a world of difference in the dugout and on the diamond. It's just been really cool to see, especially because the Pirates have a reputation in the league for kind of being a joke. So for two veteran players who have been around for a while, especially Andrew McCutchen, who everybody knows him and never wanted him to leave, the fact that he left, didn't want to leave, and came back to Pittsburgh because he really wanted to be here, and is now playing baseball at a level that he hasn't really been playing baseball in a handful of years. It's just so exciting, and it does feel like something that this team is building on, not just even if they kind of fall off the wagon and the wins and runs
Right.
stop racking up the way that they are right now. This is something that the team can carry with them into the future whenever they do, especially start pulling up guys from the minors who are going to be, the future of the franchise. It's really cool. It's hard not to get excited about it because, and even just from a nostalgia standpoint, Andrew McCutchen is Pittsburgh baseball in
He is.
this modern era of the Pirates. So having him back and seeing him with the Pittsburgh script on his chest, oh, beautiful! It's just great, and he's owning it. He's
Jim,
great.
Jordan hits on something great there, because from her perspective, she's walking back into it. Being excited is perfectly fine, right? Those of us who've been following this thing along and do know the stats of that second baseman in Double A, that we because we're paying attention to it on that nitty gritty level, we're probably very fearful going into a 4-game series against the Reds that are supposed to be horrible. After we just swept Colorado, it's just a real hard trust to earn back when you've been that bad for that long.
Yeah, and it takes the fans, I think, a little bit more to be confident in the players' confidence, and that's something Jordan. And I know we're gonna have to go to break soon, but Jordan touched on like confidence and what that means from some of the veteran guys. You see that in hockey too, where like guys can lose their way and get in funks, and like when you have other guys picking them up, like it just, confidence is a thing, right?
Mm.
And you're seeing that with the Pirates right now. That's kind of contagious, and the fans are a little bit more gun shy. But hey, if the baseball keeps getting played well, everyone's going to start, getting on board.
We're going to talk a little more baseball after we take a break, but we're going to come back, Jim. I think it's time to start talking about a certain bronze issue you brought up to me. All right?
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. We've got our good friend Jordan and Jim with us. And Jim, you have a topic that comes out of 1950s talk radio.
Mhm.
It's wonderful.
Just my style.
You did a poll on it. You had
Yeah.
2 or 3 too many mangoes. You sent it out there recklessly. You came
Yeah.
to me in text message form, fell on your sword, said we have to talk about this now. I've gotten like 3,000 people to vote. So tell us
Yeah.
about it. This
So
is your
listen,
segment.
that's the beauty of Twitter. Sometimes you just fall into things. And Pittsburgh Clothing Company, which, by the way, Pittsburgh Clothing Company, I'll just give them a plug. They were the ones that kind of brought it up about, does Cutch deserve a statue? And I'm like, you know what? That's really interesting. Just, I want to see what people's reaction to it is next thing you know, hundreds of votes. We ended up getting almost 1,500 votes on this. So it was, look, is he worthy of a statue outside PNC Park? 50% said hell yes. 22% said hell no. 28% said I'm not sure. And I was blown away by the response. But what I'll say about that is what's interesting is that 78% of people are at least considering it. And so what do you guys think about that? Because the responses were positive and negative about it. They were kind of all over the place. I'll read a few of them, but I just want to get your guys' take on it first.
Here, I'll start because you just blew me away, actually. First, the most weird number in that whole thing is the people that said hell no. Because I can't get to the point where I would ever be irritated enough by it to get to hell no.
Some people were irritated by
Good point.
I don't think I have to have it necessarily, but like if they chose to, I certainly wouldn't be picketing out. You know what I mean? I don't know. Do I think that he should? Man, I don't know. The company around PNC Park, like you've got Stargell, Honus, Clemente,
Maz.
Yeah, Maz. I guess you have Kiner's hands somewhere. You know what? He means a whole heck of a lot to an entire generation. But man, if you do that, don't you kind of have to go back and grab one from the 90s too?
Jordan, what do you think?
It's hard to say because on one hand, it's crazy to me to think that I am old enough to have someone in my sphere of age have a statue of them outside of an arena, a ballpark. But on the other hand, he does mean a whole lot to my entire generation of Pirates fans. That doesn't necessarily mean that I think he deserves a statue. I don't think he doesn't deserve a statue, but I feel like in order for me to actively advocate for him receiving a statue, he would have to do something monumental in a big moment that brings a championship to Pittsburgh. That's if they decided to put one up and that moment never happens, I wouldn't be upset about it. But yeah. I'm not going to be banging down anyone's door demanding that he get a statue unless he delivers a huge game-winning something and some series clinching something for the Pirates. Because then it's like, okay, so what are we using to quantify the determination of who deserves a statue, who doesn't, and
Yeah, great
it's
points.
it's just interesting.
Great points, Jim. What do you think? It's your poll, man.
Yeah, I will say this, like, I come down on the side of, and I purposely don't get into responding to anything until it's done with, because I don't want to sway anybody.
Yeah, you don't want to throw rats in the bucket. I get you.
Yeah. So I would be on the side of probably not. But I can also play devil's advocate pretty well with this too. And I would say is, like, and a lot of what people say is, and it's what Jordan touched on, which is, not having any type of championship, not having a World Series, type of moment for him, bringing that to Pittsburgh. The only thing I will say about that is like, baseball has changed so much since the guys that used to win championships, in the sense of, like, it's really not Cutch's fault that he never got that moment for the Pirates. And so, the Pirates don't have the money to spend, don't spend the money that they do have. And so that's the only thing, is like comparing eras when baseball is a lot tougher of a time to win championships.
Yeah.
And on top of it, he never wanted to leave in the first place, and wanted to come back. And so he could have played his whole career here, and maybe we're having a different discussion at that point. So, like, those are just the things with, like, baseball is just different to judge it solely on championships. And Jordan, you're not the first to mention that. A lot of people said that, hey, no World Series, no type of, title moments, can't do it. I'm just playing devil's advocate. That's all.
Why don't you read some of your comments there, Mr. Collector? I know you got enough of them.
Yeah. Okay. So
You're supposed to be giving me a segment off here.
Yeah, I know, dude. I get so of my own thoughts. Okay. So let's start off with Penguins Jesus. We all know Pens Jesus. He even weighed in on this, and he said, has he done anything statue worthy? Probably not. Is he absolutely the most iconic Pirate in decades? Yes. I think that sums it up pretty well, right? I mean,
that sums it up.
And just to go off of what Penn's Jesus said, was Cotton Eye Joe says he's no Willie Stargell, but nobody is. Having said that, he's the modern day equivalent. Definitely statue worthy.
Yeah, I don't know. As I sit here, I'm almost debating myself in my head. I said I wouldn't get irritated about it, and I really wouldn't. If they decided to put one up, I would never be angry about it. I'm with Jordan though. I could never fight for it.
Yeah.
I just think you could smack me down with too many arguments. I could make a case for 5 or 6 other guys before him, and that, as it sits right now, like, I know it'd be insane, but like, if something nuts happened this year, next year, and he takes them somewhere, okay, I don't know how you couldn't, but
yeah.
And let me throw another couple comments out there. So Grant says, and maybe this is something that's much more palatable for everybody, is retire his number, no statue. Hall of Famers get statues. I think that's something that I think a lot of people would probably sign off on a lot more than some type of, statue along with the game's greats. Pitt Sports Guru says, based on nostalgia, sure. He's a great player and meant a lot to the team ending its playoff drought, but I'm not sure he's worthy of a statue. Putting him up there with Roberto and Willie just doesn't seem right.
I can't argue with it. That's the thing. That's what I mean. I can't defend it to that point. So
story's not over though, so we'll see.
The Pirates have the Hall of Fame announcement coming up actually here in about a half an hour or so after you're done listening to us yammer. If you're watching the live stream, it happened a couple days ago if you're listening to us on audio when this comes out. But we should probably talk about that a little bit, because I think they'll probably have to shrink the class. Obviously, they're not going to induct 19 again. That was probably just to jumpstart it. So I'd say it's probably going to be around 5 or so. I'm just completely guessing. Who do you think gets in this time? And Jordan, I bet you probably don't have the list to call back on from the past like we do because we're much older than you. But who would you think would wind up on that wall? Even if it's somebody that you just think will eventually wind up on that wall.
Oh goodness. So who did they induct? Because I completely forget already.
It was a lot of old.
The highlights were like Josh
old.
Gibson,
Yes, like
they went back in history quite a bit.
Okay.
So I
Steve
mean, like
Glass.
Barry Bonds is obviously still out there. Manny Sanguian is still somebody that is out there.
Dick Groat.
Dick Groat was not somebody that. So like, there's still a lot of old time names too. Like personally, for me, I think Manny should be. You know, he was such a fixture for the teams that won some World Series. He's such a fixture still at the ballpark. Like I would have argued he might have even been somebody they should have put in the first one, but I would certainly hope that he's one of them this
What
time.
do you think of what Jeremy says here? Andy Van Slyke and Doug Drabeck. I like both of those. I could go with both of those eventually getting on that wall.
Sure.
I don't have to pretend this is in order. I like this one too. Lanny Fratteri.
Oh, yeah.
They'd have to do Gunner first, don't you think?
Yeah, Lanny is somebody that if you grew up watching baseball in our era, Jordan's far too young and sophisticated for this.
No, but Jordan,
yeah.
for perspective, this would be like putting Airy in before Mike Lang.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
I mean that. Yeah.
And
Right.
and if you're not a Penguins fan, I'm sorry, people. I'm not going to explain it beyond that. I did that for Jordan's benefit, not yours.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate it because I'm definitely not as polished on Pirates history as I am on the Penguins and especially the Steelers. But yeah, I pulled up the list. So Barry Bonds was like at the beginning of my introduction to the world. So he was on the team in the early 90s, and that was when I was born. And so I know from hearing my mom and dad talk about the Pirates back then that he would. I would be shocked if he didn't get in at some point for the team because he was.
Barry's your parents' Roberto, pretty much. Like your generation's Roberto. Like you hear about him, you didn't get to see him really.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, because he was by the
ton of
time
those,
I
Jim
was
and I.
watching baseball. Yeah. Oh my God.
We hear people talk about
Pirates.
Dave Parker all the time, and I see clips of Dave Parker. I love what I see of Dave Parker, but I never watched Dave Parker do anything on a baseball field. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I was too young, and I'm living on stories. Same with Roberto and all those guys, really. So it's that's where you're at with the '90s teams, which is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Bonds is interesting because 7 years as a Pirate, already a Hall of Famer for the Giants, but he's the only Pirate to ever win 2 MVPs. As many great ones as we've had. So yeah, it'd be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't expect to see anything this year, but
I tried having this conversation on Twitter, but you know, Jim is a tactical wrestler on Twitter. You can't pin him down on anything when you start trying to engage in conversation. So I'll bring it up here. I think it's pretty cool that we don't know the criteria by which they're really naming this Hall of Fame. So we as fans kind of get to just develop our own, you know, what we think makes you a Pirates Hall of Famer. So with Barry Bonds in particular, here's a scenario I'll throw out for you. Take the roids off the table and all that. I think the team level, they'll look past all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He spent almost equal amount of time here as he did, you know, in San Francisco, where he was, you know, relevant and good and everything. He's already in the San Francisco Hall of Fame. Do we want our Hall of Fame in our criteria that we set up fictitiously here? Do we want our Hall of Fame to accept a player that's already in a Hall of Fame somewhere else? Like, do we
That's a
want
good
to
point.
share that? Is there like an amount they have to spend of time here? Like, where we go, oh, that's cool? Or is AJ enough with his 3 years? You get what I mean? How do we decide that stuff? And let's start with Bonds. Like, what's the answer to that question? How do we feel about that?
It honestly, I feel like if we're talking about these fictitious guidelines and it would have to be essentially, at least in my mind, what the player did for the team while they were here and what they meant for the team when they were here. Because AJ Burnett, yeah, he was here for only a handful of years, but he came back this year to throw out the first pitch on opening day because he was an instrumental part of the only exciting Pirates baseball that has taken place in the playoffs in the last
And the people
2
went
decades.
nuts. So
And people went nuts. He's a beloved figure in Pirates history. And if we're using that, I mean, you could argue for Jason Grilli too, because he was icy vein closer in that time, and he was a fan favorite. People loved him and loved watching him. He was exciting, and I'm not saying that he should or shouldn't, but just a similar like that whole wild card team in 2013, like there's
always
just
going to be
something very
there's always going to be a soft spot in people's hearts for that that 3-year stretch there. And
so what do you think,
that,
Jim?
that's a big factor.
Is that a significant enough amount of time? I know, like you said on Twitter, you'll take it case by case.
Yeah.
I give it. And I'm not trying to pin you. Just talk through it a little bit. Like, how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like there is some kind of like weirdness about sharing a player with another organization, or would you be okay with that?
I don't think it's weird for a player that was that great, that just happened to split his career in 2 parts. I think kind of transcendent players like that, maybe like look at it for like, and I don't even know if this is something that's accurate or not. I wondered, like, because Wayne Gretzky had to play his career in different places.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that's viewed. I don't know. I'm just thinking of it now. And like, if the teams that he was on decided to do that, I think of it in the same kind of light that, I don't know what the criteria is, and I don't know what even my criteria is, but I think like, I don't know what that is, but I know it when I hear the name.
See,
I
here's
know
the
it when I see
criteria
it.
to me on that situation. I consider Gretzky to be a Los Angeles King, and my uncle considers him to be an Edmonton Oiler. So, and maybe it's that simple. Maybe there would be people that consider Barry Bonds a Pittsburgh Pirate, and then there's people that just don't see him as anything but a Giant. So maybe it's perfectly fine to have it be in 2 different places.
Yeah, and people like to bring up the steroids and stuff, but that was not a part of his Pittsburgh career either.
Yeah.
That all happened 5 years after he left. Am I defending him? I don't know, maybe. I just know he's the greatest hitter I've ever seen live, like in my lifetime. So like, I think that counts for something.
Jim, I know for a fact that you saw Josh Van Meter live last year. So I don't even want to hear that.
Oh God.
Gary, you swore to me you'd never bring his name up again. And here you are breaking that promise.
I know. All right. Hey, let's take a quick break and we'll come back. For those of you watching on the live stream, that'll just be us sitting here looking dorky for a couple seconds. On the audio, it'll be a real break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about this hot start. All right, we're back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. And it's time to talk a little more about the hot start the Pirates are off to, because we had a historically bad offense last year, Jim. It was the worst offense that they've had since 1908, statistically.
That's historic.
That's how bad it was. So, and the 50s weren't anything to really shake a stick at either, if you think about it. So
Neither were a couple of those 80s teams.
yeah, pretty doggone bad. They are off to the hottest of hot starts. We talked about what has surprised us most last week. We should probably do that again this week because there are quite a few things. I'm going to start with mine and we'll go around the room. Thing that has excited me the most and surprised me the most is the youthfulness that Andrew McCutchen is playing baseball with. The guy does not look 36 years old. I did not expect this at all. At all. I think, Jim, if anything, I spent most of the offseason warning people it was probably not going to be the Cutch you remembered.
Yeah.
And it may wind up that he can't hold it up. But right now,
it was a concern of mine, Gary. I thought, boy, I hope he doesn't come back and it looks bad. Like, I don't want to remember Cutch that way, at least initially. Like, over time, you tend to forget that stuff and you still have a better outlook on it. But I mean, like, it certainly has injected some life into him too. Like, he's gotten this, energy boost from being back, and I think it's real. Like that's an effect. Now, can he keep it up to this level? He's probably not going to do that. He's playing at like a MVP type level. So like there's going to be probably some regression. But even if it's, 70% of what you're seeing right now, that means he's been a very important player.
I mean, I totally agree, dude. I think it's been crazy. Jordan, you're watching this and you're probably thinking like whoever the new GM next year is, you're probably sad because Ron Hextall was the only one that would have gone out and gotten Patrick Hornquist next year.
Yep.
And called it a good move. And that it would have been just like Cutch. He would have come back and been the best player ever. And
of course, yeah. Only Patrick Hornquist, though.
But that's the thing. You usually can't go home again. And I felt that very much so with Cutch. And he has not only come home again, but he's kind of playing like it's going to work out that way. What's it make you feel like? Because that's your growing up time,
Yeah. Oh, my God. It just feels so the way that it always should have been. It feels like he never left. Like he didn't play for 4 other teams in between his stints here. And it's wild to see how the offense has come to life, because for me, the most surprising thing is how many times the Pirates have scored more than 5 runs in a game. Like they scored 14 runs twice against Colorado. Like that's insane.
33 in the series.
And that's unbelievable. And that's not all Cutch, but I mean, he has sort of just kind of revived this offense, and it's something to see. Yesterday was the first game that I was able to watch from start to finish, and I just could not pick my jaw up off the floor. I was like, what is going on? They just
you
kept
picked a good
scoring.
time to start. You picked a good time to jump in. I mean, good for you.
Sometimes guys can find that fountain of youth that you put them in the right situation. If they were great once, you just never know. It's been great to watch. I hope he continues. I think if he stays healthy, I mean, he's blistering the ball even when he's out. But so is most of the lineup. And maybe it's funny, Andy Haynes, the hitting coach, takes a lot of abuse from us.
Redemption tour, maybe,
from us as well, Gary.
Redemption tour, maybe.
So I mean, someone should mention, hey, something's working. If he's getting crushed when it's not working, he should be given some credit when it is. And right now, it's working.
It definitely is working right now, and may Matt Canada follow in his footsteps. Let's take one from Jeremy here. Jeremy says, "How about Oviedo pitching out of his mind? And if Brubaker isn't injured, he's probably in AAA." I don't know about that part of it, because I think it was part of their plan to have him in the the bullpen to start the season and then eventually take over for Vince.
Yeah,
But
maybe
I
a step
think-
too far, but
I think the cool thing is here we maybe have actually let Vince work through some of his issues and become enough of a fifth starter that that's kind of nice. But Oviedo, Jim, I didn't know it was in there. I didn't know that slider was in there. I'm calling it the Holy Diver. I love it. And it's an unbelievable pitch that guys can know it's coming and they cannot touch it.
they
It
can't lay
survived
off of it.
Colorado,
Yeah.
where the
Yeah.
spin rates are down. Unbelievable action on that pitch.
I think
That's a game changer if he pans out as a starter.
Oh my goodness. Putting Keller, Contreras, and Oviedo as guys you can run out there in a series or every 3 out of every 5-6 days. Boy, that's just huge. And what you're seeing now is like I have concerns, obviously. Like I think like the injuries have hurt the bullpen. It's made it really thin. I think I worry about that. But what is happening now is what you're seeing is starting pitching cures like a lot of ails for baseball teams, because the longer your starters can go and give you some quality innings, well, all of a sudden your bullpen doesn't get taxed. If it's thin, it's not getting worn out. And so those things are cumulative. And right now they're on this stretch of 9 straight quality starts. So they're talking 6+ innings.
It's crazy.
If you
don't
get,
see that
if
sort
you,
of thing in MLB, let alone the Pirates. We haven't
Yeah.
experienced it since 2015. It's the longest stretch of quality starts they've put together since 2015.
if you get any
2015 was a
semblance
pretty
of that,
damn good year, everybody.
right. It starts
Yeah, it
to
was.
cover up. It starts to cover up some other warts. And so, like, if they get any semblance of this, hey, who knows how much that could play a factor in things.
Right. Jordan, what's caught your eye the most? What's like taking you back? Like you weren't expecting to see it and then you did.
I think it's just the fact that this is a complete baseball team, because for the past few years it's been either the pitching has been there, but the bats just haven't been there, or the bats are there and the pitching collapses, or the starting pitching is not reliable. And we're seeing pretty consistently that this team can pitch well throughout the game, and they're hitting really well, and running bases hard and running smart, with the exception of the O'Neal Cruz injury, the slide into home. Everyone just seems to have an understanding of what it takes to win, and
There's
they're
a
willing
sense of
to
urgency
do it.
this year.
Yeah, a little bit, kind of like we want to win and we
Mhm.
believe that we can. So
Maybe
why
it's got
don't we
something
go
to
out
do
there
with
and
what
give it our
Sean
all?
says here. Sean says Cutch comes to the stadium expecting to win. We haven't had that over the last few years.
Yeah.
He's right.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it, I think. Dave says Jason DeLay has surprised him. Jason DeLay has surprised everybody. I bet Jason DeLay surprised himself.
I was just gonna say, which is
Jason
fine.
DeLay has never done this in his entire career, ever. Like, and I'm talking in the minors.
Yeah, in the minors. Yep.
He's making contact, and I'll tell you what, he plays a damn good catcher. He really does.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't expect it. I actually thought Heineman was the better choice, out of spring training. But DeLay actually kind of he hits in the clutch pretty well.
He
He's
makes
doing
contact
very well.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, like, look, you could pick 5 different things that have surprised you about this team so far. But I will say this, and Jordan touched on it, is like the base running to me, and like the aggressiveness on the base pads has like transformed the offense. Like they're aggressive, they're taking extra bases, they're stealing when it's there. Like all those things like help generate offense when maybe you're not having as good of a night hitting as as you are on other nights, or if it's a close game and you manufacture a run because of that. And like that to me is like a huge thing for this team. Like, don't get complacent on the base pads. Keep stressing the defense, keep doing that. And even when you go in a little bit of a slump, that can always be there if you can just find a way to get on base and be aggressive.
I mean, they look well coached this year. I think that's something that I feel like I haven't been able to say. And that might have been talent-based to a degree, but they just look more buttoned up. And maybe some of that comes from, a guy like Carlos Santana chugging down the line as fast as he can possibly go to avoid a double play when you're already up.
Yeah, I think it was 5 or 6 runs. Yeah,
5 or 6 runs. Like he didn't need to do that. Nobody would have even said anything if he got thrown out.
It's just those little things I think that veterans provide sometimes that show younger guys, and this goes across all sports, shows you how to be a professional. And
see, Jim, that's why we still have value, and Jordan's generation ought to respect us and value us and keep us around a little bit longer. Just because we get some gray in the beard doesn't mean you just toss us aside.
That's right.
Right.
Hey, she's already talking about statues for guys she knows. Jordan's realizing her own mortality as this show is going on right now.
Absolutely.
It's a life lesson, valuable one. Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Jim, though, something I did want to bring up, because just when we're talking about this great start and everything, I think it's really allowed a lot of people to shut the whole Reynolds thing off for a minute and stop thinking about that contract still hanging out there, not signed quite yet. There was a lot of consternation about his age with this contract, and how old he would be.
Gee, I wonder where you're going with this.
We've got 2 36-year-olds leading this offense right now. And we're afraid to sign a guy till he's 33, 34. I just think
I can think of worse things.
let's maybe rethink when baseball players die. Okay? Like, I understand what the stats tell us, but there are some that you can get something out of once they hit that age. Not everybody's Miguel Cabrera.
Yeah.
Not everybody is Christian Yelich and just everything falls apart all at once. Like, which, by the way, he looks back this year. So, I mean,
yeah, I think it is something that look, Cutch was somebody that kind of hit a rough
QK
patch.
here says Grant Hill, great example, but different sport. But
yeah, Cutch was someone who hit a rough patch, in his early 30s or around 30 actually. So I think people are still worried about that. Man, I'm not worried about saving the Pirates money. Like for me, I'll worry about that when I get to that point. It's still not some like $40 million contract that you can't survive if something happens. Like we're talking 15 or 20, and we're talking 15, 20 per, and we're talking that 6 years down the road from now. Like let's remember what we're talking about here. People have been trained by the Pirates to be very careful with the Pirates' money, to almost to a ridiculous degree sometimes.
Right. It's the thing I hate most about covering baseball is that money discussions aren't what you're allowed to spend, it's what you will spend. All the other sports are what you are allowed to spend. And like, we get frustrated as Penguins fans because they don't have any more money they're allowed to spend. They can't. You know what I mean?
and if they spend it wrongly,
yep. Yeah.
That's another podcast for another time for Jordan. Then that's it's their own fault that they didn't spend it right.
So anyways, all that comes back to one last thing we'll talk about, Jordan. Then I'll let you go because you've been very gracious with your time. The general manager, he's had 4 years now. This is the product of his 4th year. I don't think we're looking at his finished masterpiece yet as far as what he's trying to build. But I think one thing we can say we learned this year is he at least knows how to put pieces together that will function well together. Because I'll be honest, I looked at a lot of what he was bringing in, and Jim and I talked a lot on this show. I'm not sure these pieces fit together. Why do we have so many of this? Why did they get this? And now you're looking at the whole thing kind of working together, and even the way they're using the minor league to kind of supplement it, and the way they've survived all these injuries. I get it. And they look like they really dig each other. It's a good mix. There's something to be said for them being able to recognize that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really important you're not always going to have that luxury of guys gelling on a roster, but what we're seeing even within the dynamics of relationships on and off the field with this team is that they have a huge amount of chemistry, and they feed off of each other, and they seem to be each other's biggest fans, and where there are certain weaknesses, other guys pick up the slack, and it just they're a very cohesive unit right now. And typically when that is the case, you credit the GM, because it's their job to see those intangibles that other people can't. And it's definitely led to this Pirates team flourishing in a way that we haven't seen them be successful in a while. So it's just crazy, and it's so exciting.
And Jim, I say all this, normally I always tell you I like to see a team or a player get punched in the face before I decide to say that I'm going to predict which direction they're headed, Until I've seen a kid really struggle, I don't believe they've arrived, Same with this team. So we can make a bunch of declarations, but until they struggle. Then again, did they kind of survive already a big punch in the face that was O'Neal Cruz getting hurt? Half of the players that came here, the first thing they said about why they wanted to come here and play was because of O'Neal Cruz, including McCutchen. So
yeah, I mean, it was palpable throughout the fan base. I can't imagine what that felt like initially to the team. That's got to, it's a gut punch when you lose somebody like that, and you're gonna lose him for the majority of the season. And so, yeah, I mean, you don't forget about it, but you mentioned it, Gary. Like, no one's talking about the Reynolds extension right now.
Nope.
O'Neal Cruz, hey, the longer this goes on, the closer it comes to O'Neal Cruz being back too. So like, they've given themselves a little bit of cushion here, and that's important. Baseball seasons are long. Jordan already mentioned that. And when you get into the July and August, good starts can carry you. So that to me is something we shouldn't overlook.
Autograph seekers should want the Pirates to do really well so that there's less competition at training camp. Okay? I'm just saying.
Yep. Good point. Good point.
But hey, this has been great, Jim. I love the poll. Feel free to have too many mangoes and post another one whenever you like.
Sure, I can do that, Gary.
It was great, my friend, for real. And I love the discussion around it. And just overall, it's really nice to just kind of have a laid back, chill, happy podcast for once, where we're just talking about good stuff, because they haven't given us anything bad to look at. Jordan, thank you so much for taking the time. This was great. We'll definitely have you back. And hopefully
thanks for having me
for the whole summer, huh?
I hope so too. I love getting excited about Pirates baseball, and I think we're all used to them breaking our hearts, so it won't be anything new. But I would love to see some competitive baseball over the course of the next 4 or 5 months in Pittsburgh. It would be great.
Yeah, and I'm hoping the next 4 or 5 years too. I think
that'd be great.
Kind of what we're at the beginning of now. So, hey, anything you want to plug before you go? Because you're a musician too. I know you got songs coming out all the time and podcasts going on and writing. You're writing about the Steelers too. So,
Dang, yeah. So Fly Penguins Fly, I just joined as a co-host with Jeffrey Taylor this year. It's a game day podcast, but we're obviously going to be shifting gears. But follow us, subscribe to the show, and then I do music as well under the stage name Noah Jordan, NoaJordan, and I play a ton in Pittsburgh. So give me a follow on the old Instagram at the Noah Jordan and stay in touch, because I do play a lot and would love to meet as many Pittsburgh fans as possible while I'm out and about. But thanks again for having me. It's been a blast.
The music's up on Spotify too. Do check it out. Pretty cool
Yes,
stuff.
it is. Yeah.
So hey, without further ado, Jim, why don't you throw it to your kid this week?
You know what, Ben? Take it away, buddy.